Dan rightly said, I'm here to talk about the cross-government strategy and the cross-government work in the UK that we're doing around continuous improvement. I'm just going to set a brief bit of context. I'm getting feedback. A brief bit of context. When I talk central government for the UK, that is the 17 departments that are known colloquially as Whitehall. So that's departments like the Department for Work and Pensions, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, the Crown Prosecution Service, DEC, which is the Department for Energy and Climate Change, DEFRA, Education, people like that. Through them, we mean their agencies, and some of those agencies are the really fundamental customer and citizen-facing agencies of the UK government. So people like the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Agency that belong to the Department for Transport, and a number of others. What I don't mean is the NHS, and I'm not talking about local police forces, although of which there are 43, although the Home Office has a significant interest, as you can imagine, in what the police forces are doing. Continuing on with my context setting at the very beginning, when the government changed in May 2009, the coalition government came in with some very clear ideas about what it is they wanted to achieve. And they can actually be boiled down into spend less and remove or devolve responsibility from the centre back out to the place where the decision can best be made. Whether that's by a citizen themselves, then this government would like to see citizens taking more responsibility for their own actions, or onto the frontline services. As a consequence of that, that means some quite fundamental changes for the UK civil service. Francis Maude was appointed then as the Minister for the Cabinet Office, and it's his vision for he has a vision for what the civil service should look like. And this is his vision for the future of the UK civil service. He wants a civil service that is smaller. UK civil service currently has about 500,000 people in it. And that's not the NHS. Right? This is the civil service. There's about 500,000. Please don't ask me where the number came from, because I suspect it was pretty arbitrary. Francis would like a civil service that's got about 400,000 people in it. A civil service that is flatter, so a reduced number of management layers between the top and the bottom. There are some instances of departments and agencies that have got 12 different layers of management. A civil service that is more fluid, integrated and business-like. The vast majority of or a number rather, couldn't probably say the vast majority, a number of the ministers that make up the coalition government have come out of the business sector. They want to see a civil service that operates the same way as business does, i.e. they would like a civil service that that understands the concept of turning a profit, or at least not running at a loss. Francis would like to see a civil service where there's parity of esteem. This has been a big thing within the civil service. This is about removing the concept that policy and those that work in policy is God, and they're the people that we always reach the top, into one where, irrespective of the skill set that people have, if that is a skill set necessary to government, and they are becoming increasingly necessary to government, skill sets like commercial skills, procurement, IT, any of those kind of specialist skills that generally in business life are very highly respected, that they are seen to be as important as the people who can write policy. There's a very specific one here around seeing a significant uprating. I don't think that's a word, but you get the idea. An uprating in contract management and PPM skills. A different culture, and I will come back to that one in a moment, and the idea of more rigorous performance management. That actually ties in with a different culture. When Francis talks about a different culture, when you see the Minister for the Cabinet Office talk about a different culture, he will use the word lean. I'm trying to move him away from using the word lean, and I'll explain why in a moment. But Francis wants to see a civil service that is more efficient, and where everybody, from the most junior member of staff processing tax returns in Washington, Tyne and Wear, right the way through to the permanent secretary at the Department for Work and Pensions sitting in the Adelphi, in central London, everybody takes personal responsibility for the work that they do and for continually improving that work. So it's not enough anymore for civil servants to be able to say, but it's just rubbish, because it's always been like that. That's not acceptable. Now is the time to step up and you take responsibility. And that means having an understanding of continuous improvement techniques across government. So I said I'm trying to move the Minister for the Cabinet Office away from using the word lean, and I am. He gets it. The Minister for the Cabinet Office gets lean implicitly. I'm trying to move into using the term continuous improvement. The reason being, and I'm going to steal one of Zoe Radner's analogies here, if I had a banana, if I could have found a banana this morning, I'd have been holding a banana at this point in time, because I literally have pinched this from Zoe. Humans and bananas share 80% of the same DNA. In fact, 90% of the same DNA, I think. It's the 10% that is different. It's what differentiates a human from a banana. And actually, that is true. For anybody, you could go and Google it if you like. I'm not making this one up. Lean, systems thinking, business process reengineering, Six Sigma, etc., are 80 to 90% the same. It's the 10% that differs. And what I need government to be doing, and what I need government departments to be doing, is applying the right methodology in the right environment. So Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs and DWP started big programmes off in 2005-2006, both built around lean principles. The Environment Agency has an equally successful programme that's built around Six Sigma, because that was the right methodology in their environment. I actually don't care which methodology gets used. I care that a methodology gets used. Now, I'm probably going to get shot as I leave the podium, given that I'm standing at a conference for the Lean Enterprise Academy, saying I don't care if they don't use lean. I don't care if they don't use lean, as long as they use something. Lean is the obvious choice in most instances, but not all of them. So what part do I think this is going to play, or do we think this is going to play? We're trying to create, across government, a common continuous improvement architecture. We're trying to pull together all of the tools and the techniques and the different methodologies that are being used right the way across UK government at the moment to create a tool set available for other departments and other teams within departments to use. Some of you will have heard of PaceSetter, which is Revenue and Customs Programme. They've got a big tool set already. We've got that. They've given that to us. Likewise, the DWP Way, we've got theirs as well. Layered on top of that is we know we need capable continuous improvement capacity across government. When all of it, 2005, 2006, when the programme started off, and even now where there is some... and there are some programmes that are running, particularly there's a piece of work being done at the moment to lean the procurement process, and if anybody wants any information about that, Pippa is sitting, you see, I knew I'd noble my colleague eventually. Pippa's sitting over there. Pippa's leading on the work to lean government procurement. I wish her the very best of luck. When these all started off, we had a lot of help from consultants. There's no two ways about it. Government didn't have the expertise itself. We now have a lot of expertise within government. What we need to be able to do is make sure we have the right expertise in the right place at the right point in time. And to echo one of Dan's lessons, this is about government doing it for government and to government. You know, every time a new department comes to talk to me, the first thing I say to them is don't go and engage a consultancy. Not because we will never need to use consultancies again. We probably will. But at the moment, what I don't want is a whole set of consultancies engaged when actually at the moment most government departments don't know what it is they're trying to achieve. They've just heard a word that sounds like a good word and they need to do something about it. There is the flip side around capable CI capacity, and that is the point about line managers. That actually, if we're expecting everybody to take responsibility for their own work and for improving their own work, that means we have to build an understanding top to bottom of continuous improvement principles. This isn't about having 400,000 or 500,000 trained practitioners. This is about having an understanding of knowing when you can do things and what you can do yourself, and when do you need to call in your local experts to help you. I'm going to flip to the other end now. All of this has to be focused on the needs of our customer. We've got too many processes in government where they're focused on the needs of the people doing the processing at the back end, or, more commonly, focused on how the IT system drives the process. And I lay money that any one of you that sits in this room who is a UK citizen and has tried interfacing with government at some point in time will have that same experience. This isn't just for ladies anymore, because a number of men do it the same. Get married and change your name. I did it 2 years ago. It was one of the most painful experiences of my life. I cannot understand how it is that different, how it could be that difficult to go from one name to another, because the computer says no. We have to move away from that. We have to build in an understanding of what it is our customers need. The Cabinet Office has a team called the Behavioural Insight Team. They're into nudge and mind space and things like that. We're using them to help departments as well, because this is about developing an understanding of what the customer needs. It's also about understanding what the difference is between what the customer needs versus what they want. We have to create a leadership that is focused on continuous improvement. There's no two ways about it. This comes from the top. One of the most successful instances of Revenue and Customs Paysetter programme is in the National Insurance Contributions and Employers Office, the snappily titled NICEO in Newcastle. The man who is responsible for that office now has 6,500 staff working for him. And every day he has his team meeting around his performance hub. His argument being that if he doesn't do it that way, how can he expect his EOs and HEOs in civil service language, so his more junior managers, to do the same thing with their teams? If he's not using it properly and displaying the performance information in the way that is useful to him and his team, to be able to run the whole of that operation, how can he expect his more junior people to do it? Now, we have to change the mindset of an awful lot of people in government at the top who are used to being handed a piece of paper with a briefing on it and 3 recommendations and picking one. Right, this is quite a hard thing to do. We're starting next week with the top 200. It's the top 200 civil servants. I suspect my boss is going to have some interesting challenges when she's there. What this should give us in the middle is a set of engaged people. People engagement, staff engagement, employee engagement, call it whatever term you like, is not something you just stand up and say, you will now be engaged. It's a consequence that comes from properly empowering people. And we can use lean and other continuous improvement tools and techniques to actually engender that empowerment. So I am not running around the civil service saying, go engage your people. I had a wonderful experience with somebody a couple of weeks ago when they came and said, we want to talk about people engagement through continuous improvement. Okay. We thought about a staff suggestion box. Right. Let's go back to first principles on this. So we need a set of engaged people. We need 400,000 engaged people, but not by somebody standing there and telling them you will now be engaged. So what are we going to do? I'm going to start bottom left. We have a strategy for the UK government that isn't published because I need to rewrite it. It's got some things in it that need to be tweaked. Off the back of that, each of those 17 government departments will have to have a continuous improvement strategy. And that's a continuous improvement strategy that covers off why are they doing it? What is the compelling need for continuous improvement within their department? And that's quite easy to define in places like the Department for Transport and its 4 big citizen-facing agencies. It's quite hard to define in places like the Cabinet Office and the Treasury, but it's no less important in those places. To help departments do that, we've got agreement from a couple of departments to lend their senior experts, their mainly lean-trained experts, to departments to help them write their strategies. And I have a very small team in the Cabinet Office to do the same thing. And as we do it, we'll start pulling in information from the SR10, which is the spending review that was done in 2010. So this is the settlement that departments have to, spending settlement they have to live within between 2010 and 2015, i.e. how much less they should be spending in 2015 versus now. Government is still running something called capability reviews. It was a flagship programme of Sir Gus O'Donnell, who is the Cabinet Secretary who's going at the end of the year. We're also doing a lot of work at the moment, my team, with the team looking at fraud, error and debt across UK government. We have high levels of debt across government. We have high levels of fraud as well. A lot of that comes about because there's too many, there are too many possible places for error within processes, actually, particularly on the fraud and the error side. And on debt, we're carrying a lot of debt because we haven't got our processes sorted out to recover the debt. Or because, actually, of the bit in the middle, which is error, which is around central government getting it wrong, which means our citizens then suffer. There's also a programme running within government called Tell Us How. This is about, it's like a civil service-wide suggestion box. It's inviting the frontline civil servants to tell the centre how the centre could do it better. As I said, I have a small team in the centre. We're providing some support to departments, and we also are starting to broker support between departments. This seems to be something quite fundamentally new for the civil service, the idea of lending people to help other people out. To put it bluntly, it comes down to the fact that Revenue and Customs and DWP in particular have had a lot of money spent on their continuous improvement programmes, and now it is time to put up and help somebody else. We're trying to pull together the networks that exist already and build links between a number of the networks that are already existing so that there's some peer-to-peer support. And we're also doing a lot of work around learning. I'll come on to learning in a minute. Come back to learning. I mentioned earlier we're trying to create this common architecture. This is built around the tools and techniques that are already in existence and looking at the future ones that should be being brought in. In the centre, we're trying to create the benefits model for departments as to why they should do this. This is proving to be exceptionally difficult to do. I'd like to say I had a number of conversations with Zoe Radner at LERC, the Lean Enterprise Research Centre, and they're finding it equally difficult to do as well. To boil down why you would do continuous improvement into pounds and pence at the beginning as opposed to retrospectively. Primarily because I am very clear that government's continuous improvement programme is not about spending less as its first aim. The first aim has to be around two other things, which are on my next slide. The spending less is a consequence of that. Quite a fortuitous consequence at the moment. I said we're doing quite a lot of stuff around learning, and I've now got a red ring around leaders and managers. Dan's mentioned the Bermuda Triangle, as you call it. We've got we talk about the leadership triangle and trying to invert the leadership triangle and trying to move away from leaders sitting in their offices and thinking that they need to be given a piece of paper to answer, pick one of three recommendations, or being the only people that ever have access to anything that resembles management information. Civil service learning have recently been created. They're pulling together all of the generic learning across the UK civil service, and we've managed to convince them that into the 3 management and 3 leadership learning interventions, L&D speak, that continuous improvement principles will be woven into them. And we will then have a separate module for all of our leaders and managers to go through around CI tools or techniques that they should be using as a leader or a manager. We've also managed to convince them that we should have an e-learning module that every member of the civil service initially will have access to, but we're hoping over the next couple of years that we will mandate around continuous improvement. So when somebody new joins the civil service, they will have their mandatory e-learning around health and safety, protecting information, and continuous improvement, because this becomes the way the civil service does things. I will be successful, and the continuous improvement strategy for government will be successful when we stop talking about it, because it's just how we do things. This is the learning opportunities map for civil service learning. Please don't even try to read it. But I just put it up as a nice illustration of the fact that we are now managing to creep our way into ever more elements of the generic L&D that's being offered. Continuous improvement is coming up there. So what's the point? As I said, a happy consequence of continuous improvement should be spending less. But what we really want to do is increase customer satisfaction and people engagement, or staff engagement. They're our two drivers. Or more specifically, and I've just picked out a few of my favourite examples. Revenue and Customs, since 2005, have reported savings of 970 million and productivity increases of 30%. The National Audit Office are following me. No doubt they will dispute some of these figures. I'm telling you the ones the departments are reporting to me as opposed to the ones that have been audited by the NAO. Picking up on a couple of the specifics, the Swansea and Cardiff Debt Pursuit Office in a year showed a productivity increase around PAYE, which is pay-as-you-earn tax, of 88%, and a VAT quality uplift of 100%. When we talk about resource reduction in all of these, this has all been done through natural wastage as well. HMCTS is Her Majesty's Court and Tribunal Service. The Northampton County Court Bulk Centre showed a saving of 1,600 hours of staff time per month. That's £20,000 saved through their initial engagement, and they've increased their staff engagement. I'm going to flick back to HMRC. We talk so much about, I talk so much about lean being out in the citizen-facing area and continuous improvement in the citizen-facing processes, but it's just as important in the back office to support our own people as well. HMRC's HR Shared Service Centre doesn't just provide HR services for HMRC, it provides them for a number of other government departments as well. The idea that in 2007 you sent an email and 112 days later you got a response is quite frightening, really. So that they managed to drive it down to 1 day is a bit of those, why was it taking 112 days in the first place? But they have, through Lean and PaySetter, they've driven it down to a turnaround of a day. DWP, Department for Work and Pensions, have got reported savings of 580 million. Do you two like the fact I'm being really clear that they're reported savings, not audited savings?
We'll make that mistake.
Yeah, you can do that bit. And they've increased their staff engagement scores in the sites where continuous improvement is properly working by about 33%. The two examples from the police, I'm just going to talk about the Norfolk Police. Norfolk Police have, all of the police forces actually, through a programme called Quest, have been doing kind of point interventions for process improvements. They haven't been looking at the whole system yet. But I can't quite manage to wrap my head around this one. In 2 pilot districts, they started booking appointments with witnesses. And they managed to say, in the 2 pilot districts in Norfolk, Norfolk is not a particularly highly populated area of the UK, and it's quite low crime as well. So they started booking appointments with witnesses and saved £226,000 a year in these 2 pilot districts by booking appointments. And I'm still left with the why didn't you do it before moment. Apparently, what they were doing was just turning up to interview a witness to see if they may have been at home. And regularly they weren't. Which is a kind of fairly obvious point, really, that if you just pop, but you rock up, then to take a witness statement and they're not there, it's one hell of a wasted journey. So they started booking appointments, and they saved £226,000 in a year, which is a phenomenal amount for a point intervention, which was driven by the front line saying, why don't we just ring them first, ask them when they're going to be at home? But it shows that real switch from everything being driven by the top to ideas coming up from the bottom and applying the tools and techniques in a useful and sensible manner. All I can say is I'm really hoping that the pilot has now become a reality. I'm not certain, I haven't been told that bit, and that we are still booking appointments with witnesses. But there's some pretty stark numbers up there. The ones that we don't have, because until I've popped up, nobody started measuring it or thinking about it, is the impact on customer satisfaction and on employee engagement. That's my job, is now to create the model. Somebody in my team is going to create the model that we can do that against, and hopefully we'll start to see uplifts right the way across the piece. But it will only be successful if we can change the attitude of our leaders. So my primary focus is, at the moment, is on changing the mindset of the leaders of the civil service. If I can't get them to change the way they think and the way they behave, then actually I run a huge risk of creating a groundswell that is then squashed. And we have a load of enthusiastic people who are then even more demotivated because they've tried to make change and they haven't. So what am I trying to do? I'm trying to get government departments to move towards thinking in a continuous improvement way, using the tools and techniques, by changing the behaviours of all of their leaders. And it's only through that I'm actually going to be able to create this culture of continuous improvement that eventually becomes just the way we do things.